All right, so we're on page 153, chapter 26, Sacrifices. Can you guys see the Walk Two Moons cover? Anyone? I'm not in chat anymore. So someone,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I can see. Yeah, you can.
Okay, and go ahead and leave the chat. I don't want chat on right now, guys. I mean, it's on, but don't talk in the chat, please. Just leave that alone so you guys can follow along while you're reading. All right, so chapter 26, Sacrifices. The weekend was unbelievably long. Phoebe arrived with her suitcase on Saturday morning. I said, "Golly, Phoebe, are you planning to spend a month here?" When I took her up to my room, she asked if she was going to be sharing the room with me. "Why, no, Phoebe," I said. "We built a whole new extension just for you." "You don't have to be sarcastic," she said. "I was only teasing, Phoebe. But there's only one bed." "Good powers of observation, Phoebe." "I thought you might sleep downstairs on the couch. People usually try to make their guests feel comfortable." She looked around my room. "We're going to be a little crowded in here, aren't we?" I did not answer. I did not bash her over the head. I knew why she was acting this way. She sat down on my bed and bounced on it a couple of times. "I guess I'll have to get used to your lumpy mattress, Sal. Mine is very firm. A firm mattress is much better for your back. That's why I have such good posture. The reason you slouch is probably because of this mattress." "Slouch?" I said. "Well, you do slouch, Sal. Look in the mirror sometime." She mashed on the mattress. "Don't you know anything about having guests? You're supposed to give your guests the best that you have. You're supposed to make some sacrifices, Sal. That's what my mother always says. She says in life you have to make some sacrifices." "I suppose your mother made a great sacrifice when she took off," I said. I couldn't help it. She was really getting on my nerves. "My mother did not take off. Someone kidnapped her. She's undergoing tremendous sacrifice at this very moment in time." She started unpacking. "Where shall I put my things?" When I opened up the closet, she said, "What a mess! Do you have some extra hangers? Am I supposed to leave my clothes jammed up in the suitcase all weekend? A guest is supposed to have the best. It is only courtesy, Sal. My mother says, I know, sacrifice." 10 minutes later, Phoebe mentioned that she was getting a headache. It might even be a migraine. My aunt's foot doctor used to get migraines, only they turned out not to be migraines at all. Do you know what they were? "What?" I asked. "A brain tumor." "Really?" I said. "Yes," Phoebe said. "In her brain." "Well, of course it would be in her brain, Phoebe. I figured that out when you said it was a brain tumor." I don't think that's a particularly sympathetic way to speak to someone with a migraine or a potential brain tumor. In my book was a picture of a tree. I drew a round head with curly hair, put a rope around the neck, and attached it to the tree. It went on and on like that. I hated her that day. I didn't care how upset she was about her mother. I really hated her, and I wanted her to leave. I wondered if this was how my father felt when I threw all those temper tantrums. Maybe he hated me for a while. After dinner, we walked over to Mary Lou's. Mr. and Mrs. Finney were rolling around on the front lawn in a pile of leaves with Tommy and Dougie, and Ben was sitting on the porch. I sat down beside him. Phoebe went looking for Mary Lou. Ben said, "Phoebe's driving you crazy, isn't she?" "I like the way he looked right in your eyes when he talked to you." "Extensively," I said. "I bet Phoebe's lonely." I don't know what came over me, but I almost reached up and touched his face. My heart was thumping so loudly that I thought he would be able to hear it. I went into the house. From the back window, I watched Mrs. Finney climb a ladder placed against the garage. On the roof, she took off her jacket and spread it out. A few minutes later, Mr. Finney came around the back of the house and climbed up the ladder. He took off his jacket and spread it out next to her. He lay down on the roof and put his arm around her. He kissed her. On the roof, in the wide open air, they lay there, kissing each other. It made me feel peculiar. They reminded me of my parents before the stillborn baby, before the operation. Ben came into the kitchen. As he reached into the cupboard for a glass, he stopped and looked at me. Again, I had that odd sensation that I wanted to touch his face right there on his cheek in that soft spot. I was afraid my hands might lift up and drift over to him if I was not careful. It was most peculiar. "Guess where Mary Lou is?" Phoebe said when she came in. "She's with Alex on a date." I had never been on a date. Neither, I assumed, had Phoebe. That night at my house, I pulled the sleeping bag out of the closet and spread it on the floor. Phoebe looked at it as if it were a spider. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll sleep in it." I crawled in and pretended to fall asleep immediately. I heard Phoebe get into bed. A little later, my father came into the room. "Phoebe," he said, "is something the matter?" "No," she said. "I thought I heard someone crying. Are you okay?" "Yes," she said. "Are you sure?" "Yes." I felt bad for Phoebe. I knew I should get up and try to be nice, but I remember when I had felt like that, and I knew that sometimes you just wanted to be alone with the birds of sadness. Sometimes you had to cry by yourself. That night, I dreamed that I was sitting on the grass peering through a pair of binoculars. Far off in the distance, my mother was climbing up a ladder. She kept climbing and climbing. It was a thumpingly tall ladder. She couldn't see me, and she never came down. She just kept on going. I'm going to pause. Guys, one of you is unmuted, and I actually can't unmute from here. Can you guys all make sure that you're on mute, please? Thank you. All right, chapter 27, Pandora's Box. The next day, as I was helping Phoebe lug her suitcase home, I said, "Phoebe, I know you've been upset lately." "I have not been upset lately," she said. "Sometimes, Phoebe, I like you a lot." "Why, thank you. But sometimes, Phoebe, I feel like dumping your cholesterol-free body out the window." She did not have a chance to respond because we were at her house, and she was more interested in besieging her father with questions. "Any news? Did Mom come home? Did she call?" "Sort of," he said. "She phoned Mrs. Cadaver." "Mrs. Cadaver? Whatever for? Why would she?" "Phoebe, calm down. I don't know why she phoned Mrs. Cadaver. I haven't been able to speak to Mrs. Cadaver myself yet. She isn't home. She left a note here." He showed it to Phoebe. Norma called to say she's okay. Beneath Mrs. Cadaver's signature was a PS saying that Mrs. Cadaver would be away until Monday. "I don't believe that my mom called Mrs. Cadaver. Mrs. Cadaver's making it up. Mrs. Cadaver probably killed her and chopped her up. I'm calling the police." They had a huge argument, but at last Phoebe fizzled out. Her father said he had been calling everyone he could think of to see if her mother had indicated where she might be going. He would continue calling tomorrow, he promised, and he would speak to Mrs. Cadaver. If he did not receive a letter or a direct phone call from her mother by Wednesday, he would call the police. Phoebe came out on the porch with me as I was leaving. She said, "I've made a decision. I am going to call the police. I might even go to the police station. I don't have to wait till Wednesday. I can go whenever I want." That night, she phoned me. She was whispering again. "It seems so quiet here. I don't know what is the matter with me. I was lying on my bed and I can't sleep. My bed's too hard." On Monday, Phoebe gave her oral report on Pandora. She began in a quivering voice. For some reason, Ben already talked about my topic, Pandora, when he did his report on Prometheus. However, Ben made a few little mistakes about Pandora. Everyone turned around to stare at Ben. "I did not," he said. "Yes, you did." Phoebe's lip trembled. "Pandora was not sent to man as punishment, but as a reward." "Was not," Ben said. "Was too," Phoebe said. "Zeus decided to give man a present, since man seemed lonely down there on earth, with only the animals to keep him company. So Zeus made a sweet and beautiful woman, and then Zeus invited all the gods to dinner. It was a very civilized dinner with matching plates." Mary Lou and Ben exchanged an eyebrow message. Zeus asked the gods to give the woman presents to make her feel like a welcome guest. Phoebe glanced at me. They gave her wonderful things, a fancy shawl, a silver dress, beauty. Ben interrupted. "I thought you said she was already beautiful." They gave her more beauty. Are you satisfied? Her lip was no longer trembling, but she